are a traditional French dish that's so delicious and so versatile. You can use the batter to make thin pancakes that can wrap around desserts, savory fillings, ice cream, or be eaten alone. They're so flavorful. When I was a kid, whenever my mom wanted to impress company, she would make crepes. And I'm going to show you the way that I make them now and share one of my favorite crepe recipes. You can make the batter by hand, but I think it's easier if you make it in the blender. I start by adding 3 eggs, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1½ cups of whole milk, 2/3 cup of melted butter, and I use salted for this, and last but not least, 1/2 cup of water. Once you've combined all of your ingredients, blend it until it's completely smooth. If you don't have a strong blender, you can whisk it by hand and then let it sit in the refrigerator for a few hours. Letting it sit will allow everything to even out so that you don't have any dry pockets in the batter. I'm going to use my blender though. And everything's mixed. Make sure there's no flour floating on top. If there is, just stir it in and blend it again. Now let's talk equipment. When my mom was making crepes, when I was a kid, she would always use a standard frying pan. She would pour the batter in, and then she would have to tilt the pan to get it even and to get it to coat the bottom of the pan. Unfortunately, when you do that, what often happens is an irregular circle, because as things are cooking, the edges are setting and you're going to be tilting and moving things around. Her solution was to take the crepes once they were cooked, place them on a surface, trace around the outside with a knife. She would always use a Cool Whip bowl, stencil her circle, and then she would have a perfect circle that she would use for her recipes. I don't have to do that because I have better tools, and I'm going to share those with you. This pan is from France. It's a non-stick crepe pan. It does have a lip, but you'll notice the lip isn't as wide as it usually is on a pan that's like a skillet. And that makes it much, much easier, because what you're going to want to do the easiest crepe making is use this tool. This is called a râteau, which is a French word for rake. You can also find these listed some places as crepe rakes. So what you'll do is you'll pour the batter in and then use this to very quickly spread the batter in an even thin layer. It works like a charm and it makes it so easy. This crepe pan is one of my favorites, and actually my daughter is really good at crepe making. We do this a lot, and this is her favorite tool for when we make them, and I have to agree, it's really fabulous. It's a vintage Le Creuset crepe pan. It's cast iron. It weighs a ton, and because of this, it maintains its heat consistently and evenly. So once you get this to the right temperature, if you just keep it consistently on that temperature, you can rake out crepe after crepe after crepe, and you'll have perfectly cooked, perfectly even colored crepes, and they're glorious. This also works really well with the râteau for spreading the batter around. There's no lip, there's nothing to get in the way, and if you've got it at the right temperature, and if your oven's level, then once you pour the batter in, it'll spread toward the edges and you're ready to go. If you're going to make a lot of crepes though, you may want to go ahead and buy an electric crepe griddle. This is specifically designed for cooking them. In France, you'll see these at creperies by the street, and they have really big, heavy-duty ones that fabulously hold the heat. This is not a very expensive model. I actually got this on the internet, and it gets the job done. Sometimes I do have to tweak the temperature just a little bit. It does have an adjustable thermometer, and to be honest, it's not as consistent or as even with the heat as the more expensive models or using my heavy-duty cast iron pan, but it's so nice and it's so easy because it's all in one. The heat source and the pan are together, and so for times like these where you're not wanting to be standing over an oven, this is a great way to go. These are the râteaus that I mentioned. If you can't find them, you can make your own by taking a dowel rod and inserting it into another dowel to create a T. This is a wooden crepe spatula. I bought these in Brittany. They like this style of wooden spatula for flipping the crepes over. It works really well because when they're cooked, they don't stick to the wood. However, if you can't find a wooden spatula, you could use a metal spatula or even a silicone spatula, but wood does work really well. Finally, another tool that you will need is a ladle. This ladle, I know from experience, is the perfect size. It's a 3-ounce ladle for the batter. Once I pour this in the middle of my crepe pan, I'll have exactly the right amount for a round crepe. Now that we've got all of our tools, let's get started making the crepes. A few tips I do want to point out though. I like to put a piece of parchment paper or wax paper, you could even use aluminum foil, underneath the edge of my pan so that if there are any drips, they're caught there. Also, when you're using your tools, you're going to get them pretty dirty and you're going to want to put them down. By having a piece of parchment here, I will be able to contain all of the batter so it doesn't spread out, dry, and then make a mess to clean up. Finally, my blender is plastic. This is hot. If I'm making my crepes on my oven or on my griddle, you want to make sure that you don't get this too close to the heat or you will melt your blender. Not that I've done that before. Okay, maybe once. So be careful. If you know that you're prone to doing that, transfer the batter to something that's heat proof so you don't accidentally bump into the pan and end up with a slightly warped blender container. You could also go ahead and dip directly from the blender canister if you want. Just be careful not to melt it in the process. So this is the ladle that I like. The rule of making crepes is generally the first one is ugly. It's just life. It's okay. You're going to prime the pan when you make the first crepe. This batter, as you saw, has a lot of butter in it. That butter doesn't just make the crepes taste good, it also helps prevent them from sticking. I also added a good amount of water. The water helps to thin the batter so that our crepes are nice and thin and spread easily. As you can see, this rotto makes this job so easy. All right, just like with a pancake, once the batter's down, you're going to want to watch it as it cooks. It smells delicious. Watch as it cooks. It should look dry on the surface. You'll notice a few bubbles forming as the air pockets form when it's heating up. And then once you think it's completely dry, it looks like it's set and it's going to be able to hold itself together. Bring your spatula and use that to carefully ease up the edge of your crepe. So I'm just gently pressing this underneath the edge, and I like to roll the spatula and lift it away and then flip it over and unroll it on the other side. If there's a hole or a tear, you can patch it. So I've got a little tiny tear right there. I'll go ahead, put a little more batter on that, let that fill in. I did tell you the first one usually has a few little problems, so that's where we are. Now, as you can see, it's not a very dark crepe. You don't want this to be tan. You want it to be fair. It cooks more usually when you fill it. It doesn't have to though. It is fully cooked. The batter is set when you're done. But if you cook it too much, it will make your crepe brittle and crisp. And then when you go to move it, it'll break or tear more easily. So I think we're good here. Let me go ahead and flip it over and show you. The other side is a beautiful pale golden color. This is the ugly crepe. You know, I think I did okay. You can tell I've got a lot of practice on this. It's now set. It's cooked on both sides. It smells buttery and delicious. Let's make another one. I'm on to my second crepe. I'm gonna go ahead, lift that over and flip that. These are perfect. The good thing about having one ugly crepe first is usually you get to eat that one. Now I do want to point out, some people think you need to layer these and stack them with parchment between each crepe. I don't feel that that's necessary. Mine do fine stacked together as long as you cook them completely. So I'll go ahead and pull this one up and we'll be on to the next one. Now, if you want to make these in advance and freeze them, they freeze beautifully. However, when you're ready to use them after you've thawed them, let them thaw in the refrigerator and then carefully warm them slightly with your hand. Just bring it up to like body temperature as you peel away the edges. That will soften the butter and help them to separate from each other more easily. If you try to pull your crepes apart while they're really cold, I find that a lot of times they stick because the butter that's in the batter sort of connects to the next crepe and you end up with the butter fusing the crepes together. But if you warm that butter a little bit by using just the temperature of your hand, just the heat of your hands, that'll soften the butter enough that you can peel the crepes apart. Now I'll keep cooking all of the crepe batter until I've made all of them. If you don't want to make all of the crepes at once, you can make the batter and refrigerate it over a couple of days and use it to make your crepes over that time frame. I do find though that sometimes when you do that, the surface of the batter will get a little gray as the ingredients will oxidize. So if you don't want that to happen, what you could do is put a layer of plastic wrap against the surface of the batter, and that will prevent that darkening from happening on the top. And when you're ready to use the batter, if you've refrigerated it, just give it another blend or whisk it really well with your whisk so that it's nice and smooth. You can make sure that there are no lumps and everything is evenly mixed and fully combined. By using a wooden tool, I'm safe to use a non-stick surface. If you're using a metal tool, make sure that you're not using a pan that can be scratched or damaged by that. There are other options available. You could use something that's silicone or a heat-proof plastic, but I really think wooden tools are the best. I also find that sometimes if you roll the spatula, as you can see I'm rolling that gives you a little more flexibility to move the crepe gently without damaging it. And so I like to use that and sort of roll the spatula underneath and unroll it as things are done and things pull together nicely. Once you've made your crepes, they'll keep in the refrigerator covered with plastic wrap so they don't dry out for several days. I love to use them for savory or sweet applications. I used to think a chocolate hazelnut crepe was the best. This was my favorite option for many years, but I've moved on. I'm going to show you my favorite option now. I know chocolate and hazelnut is a great flavor and it's hard to beat, but I think this does beat it. I'm going to start by adding just a little bit of butter to the pan, or I'm actually going to add it to my crepe. So there I have it. It's in the pan. I'll let that melt, and I'm going to add some sugar. Doesn't take a lot, like a teaspoon of sugar will be plenty. Now the butter's optional. You can use less sugar or more sugar if you want. I didn't even use all that was in the spoon because a little does go a long way. And I sort of was generous with the butter because I'm going to let it coat the pan so that as the sugar melts, it makes a little bit more of a syrupy sauce and it's less sticky because melting sugar is very sticky. Now I'm going to take some fresh lemon and squeeze that over and let it soak into the crepe. So now I've got the flavors of the butter, the sugar, and the lemon juice combining together with the buttery goodness of the crepe itself. Miraculously, when this is all pulled together, it ends up tasting like a sauce, not like it's just a crepe with a little lemon juice squeezed on top of it. So now I let it sit long enough that things were warmed through. I'm gonna go ahead and mop up what's left of that butter. I'm gonna fold this over and fold it again. And then I'll go ahead and take it up, and there you have it. I know that one isn't gonna be enough, so I'll do one more. A crepe citron, one of my all-time favorite crepe treats. I hope you'll enjoy making these. I also wanna say, I grew up in a place where everybody called these crepes. We do tend to dwell on the vowels when we say words here in the South, but in France or in French, these are called crepes. So I have had a lot of practice and a lot of coaching, and I try very hard to say it correctly, but sometimes I do say crepes by mistake. So whichever way you refer to them, they're delicious, they're buttery, and they are a wonderful, versatile thing to add to your repertoire. If you'd like to buy the tools or find my recipe, it's on our website at KitchenAbleCooking.com. Please subscribe on our channel so you know when we release new videos. We really love to hear from you and want to share content that helps make your life a little more delicious. Bon appetit.